Hello and welcome to this live webinar event. It's an introduction to Microsoft Teams powered by Cloud Design Box and RivaNET. Let's just move on to the next slide, Darren. So I'll just quickly introduce ourselves first, and then we'll get an introduction from our partners, RivaNET. So we're Cloud Design Box. We specialize in Microsoft Teams and SharePoint for schools. And we try and make it really easy to use for schools. We automate a lot of it for you and hopefully help save teachers time by creating centralized resource areas. So we work with over, I think the last count I did was 38 independent and international schools in the UK and abroad. There's a few examples on there. Just move over to the next slide, Darren. And this is a quick quote from the King's School in Canterbury that we work with. We've got the case study on the website. Please feel free to go and have a look at that if you get a chance. And we'll also provide our contact details at the end. So I'm going to hand over to Darren and Lloyd, who's going to take you through this presentation. Hello, Darren.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for that. So to introduce you to John Sainthouse from RivaNET. John, if you'd like to tell us about what RivaNET does and what areas you work in.
Yes, thank you, Dan. I'd be delighted to. So RivaNET, we are education technology specialists, and we do a huge amount of work with independent schools specifically. So that is probably 90–95% of our work. And you can see many familiar faces, ranging from prep schools. So please, Darren. Hello, Darren.
Yeah, it's just moved that slide across for you, John.
Okay, I've not seen it. There we go. Bit of a lag. Thank you, Darren. Yeah, so just a few words about RivaNET and what we do. So we are a trusted IT partner. Because we work so closely with independent schools, we know what makes them tick and what their specific needs are. So many generic IT suppliers don't really understand schools and independent education, but we really do. And we like to help schools achieve their IT ambitions effectively. So if you want to go to the next slide. And I'm glad you mentioned King's School Canterbury, because we work very closely with them as well, providing some cybersecurity systems. In terms of our work with 365 and Teams, we do a bit of Teams work. We recommend Cloud Design Box to all of our schools, but we can also provide some help. So here's an example of John Lyons School, where at the beginning of the pandemic, as with many schools, had Office 365, had some Teams, but didn't really have it properly set up and needed some very quick and urgent help. So we helped them get them up and running so they could start using it for teaching. So in a nutshell, that's RivaNET.
Thank you, John. So the purpose of today's presentation is to show you how Microsoft Teams can be used in the classroom and also at home if you're doing blended learning. So there are some massive benefits for both teachers and for students. Some of the benefits in terms of teachers are that it's just a very simple way to post news out to students, either in individual classes, or you can send news items out to larger numbers of students. And of course, you can assign work in a very formal way. So if you want to make sure that students are definitely receiving clear instructions about what work they need to do by which date, and then those students can actually submit that work, and that work can get marked by the teachers. And of course, you can also set that work in advance, so it allows you to do some forward planning as well. And the other big aspect, of course, of Teams is that you can have your live lessons, and in those live lessons you can have elements which are interactive, where you have teachers working with students in the classroom, working with students at home, because it might be a mixed experience at the moment. And of course, you can just record those videos, those lessons, so that students can potentially play them back later. Now, that's especially important if students don't necessarily have access to the internet or to devices at the moment when that lesson's actually happening live. And from a student point of view, of course, it allows them to carry on their learning outside the classroom, they can work in the classroom, they can work on the bus, on the train, they can work at their grandmother's house, and they can work at home. And of course, parents then get the opportunity as well to work with their children and to support them, which of course is really important if you're talking about your younger students, your prep kind of environments and pre-prep as well. So it's a safe place for students to talk to each other. Everything's monitored, so nothing can be said by a student to another student without it being tracked. So it's safer than some of those kind of social media networks that students may be using. If students have their own devices, then of course things like Class Notebook become very useful, because students can take notes and they can start working as independent learners, choosing what to take notes on, taking their own notes in there and being able to go back to refer to those notes at any time. And if you have students that have special educational needs, or students whose first language is not English, then they can still work with the text and the documents that you're using things like the Immersive Reader. So Lloyd will be showing you that later. So briefly, this is what we're going to cover in the next 20-25 minutes or so. Just a general overview of Teams and the tools and how to get into it, how to make the most of posts and conversations with students, how to use the Class Notebook for note taking and pushing out structured pages to students for them to work on. And also this idea of centralizing resources, so that instead of students and teachers working with resources in individual classes and silos, it's possible with the way that we do things to put things in centralized areas which become permanent, kind of like textbooks, because the students don't write on them and they're going to stay with us for the next 10 years. And then you can use those resources from within the class teams if you don't want to leave the Teams environment, and you can use those resources when creating assignments. So I'll hand you over to Lloyd now for him to show you what Teams can do for you.
Great, thanks for that, Darren. So let me just share my screen a second. So I'm going to start from the main SharePoint homepage just to show you how you can navigate into Teams and make it really easy to find all of the teams that you teach. So from this main homepage, we can use the mega menu and we can see all of the classes for this academic year, or we can just use the My Classes link, which will take me straight to the class dashboard. So within this dashboard, we can see all of the classes that we teach within here. And this is how I can just go straight into Teams from these links. So I can see all of the students within my class team, and then I've got a link straight to that class team there, which will then spin me off into Teams. So if you are completely new to Teams, I'll just give you a quick overview of the tools and what we can see within here. So just going from the left-hand side in the main toolbar within Teams, you can see right at the top, we've got an activity bell, and that's where you can just keep up to date with everything that's going on within your class team. So as a teacher, you'll be able to see if any of the students have replied to any of the messages, and also assignments will pop up in these notifications as well. You then get a private chat area. So if you're maybe speaking to other members of staff, you can use this for any quick messaging. And then you've got all of the teams that you are a member of. So we can see the English class that we've got currently. If I go back to all teams, I can see lots of different other types of teams. If that's maybe subject areas where we can store all of those long-term resources, we'll be linking into later on in this session. I've then got assignments as well, so I'll be covering that as well later to show you how we can actually set those up. But from this view on the left-hand side, that will actually show us all of the assignments we've got set across all of our classes. So it makes it really easy to be able to see and dive into any of the assignments that are ongoing or have been returned by the students. Then we've got the calendar as well. So this is how you could keep up to date and maybe plan your weeks. If you're setting up any remote lessons within Teams, you do have your calendar which links into your Outlook calendar as well. So you have everything in one place that you can access. And then you have some calls and recent files that you can access as well. So going into the class team that I will use today then, just going into one of my English classes and looking at first of all how we can use this to extend the classroom and keep the students up to date and send messages within this main general area and some of the channels that we've set up. So first of all, we can see we've got some assignments which have been set, maybe some online remote lessons as well, and then just some general announcements and even some praise which we've added in. So to actually start new conversations and speak to the students, we can use the new conversation box at the bottom. And this is where I would always recommend to use the @ symbol as soon as if we are actually typing a message in here. So if I was to @ the team, that would then send a message to every student within the class. So if I just select the title there in that suggestions box, as soon as I've sent this message out, the students will receive a notification and they can keep up to date with everything that's going on within that class. So to actually make this a bit easier, add some more room to formatting this message, we can use this icon at the bottom left here. And now you can see we've got a couple more different options to actually send the message out. So I could add a subject onto here. So I could maybe call this homework, for example. And then we can even add this to announcement type of message to really make that stand out, which can be quite useful, especially over time if you're sending quite lots of messages within here, where you can make the messages stand out and add a quick headline onto that message there. We can add a background image as well. So we've got a couple of different illustrations which come built into Teams already. And now I can just send that into the team by using the arrow at the bottom right there. So this could be a way to maybe stop using emails as much. It's a bit of a quicker way to keep everything in one place for the class and make it easy for the students to be able to see and keep up to date with everything that's going on. So to be able to actually speak to individual students as well, so if you want to maybe just ask a student a question within here, so that example I just showed you then was sending a message to the full class. Again, we can use that @ symbol. So if I was replying to a student, I could use the @ symbol. Again, we've got some suggestions of some of the students within the class. And this time I can just maybe mention a student's name and post that into the team, and they'll then receive a notification as soon as that's come through.
So if you post to a student like that, do all the students see it, or is it just that one student?
Yep, so all the students would see this message because I'm using the general area. That's where I've posted this message into. So the general area comes with every single class team that you would have. And it's basically an area which is open to all of the students, so they can access and see any of the messages within there. But as we'll see in a moment, so if I was just to switch to my student account that I'm going to use for today, and so I'll be using this within each demo that I'll cover. And again, we can go into the teams with the student account using that dashboard. So from the student view, we can actually see every class team that we take within here, and then we've got a link straight to the class team from these links. So as soon as I've come into Teams, I should see a couple of notifications that have come through, which I've just posted within that general area. So as you can see within the activity feed, we've got a notification because Susan is a member of the class, but also they do have a notification just when I mention Susan's name, which is highlighted as well there at the bottom. So switching back to the teacher's view now, and we'll talk about some of the type of messages you can add in. So there's the praise tool as well, which is a really good one to mention, and also going over how we can set up some extra channels and customizing the team as the teacher. So starting a new conversation, again, a couple of us to mention within here, but there are lots of different types of messages you can add in. You can attach documents as well from the centralized resources, and there's some GIFs tools as well that you can use. For this example, I'll show how you can use the praise option, which is quite a nice add-in into these class teams. So as soon as we use that praise tool, we can select from a range of different badges within here, and I can just type the name of the student that I want to send praise to. And then I can add a personalized note on the left-hand side there. And then as soon as I'm happy with that, I can preview what that would look like within the team and then send that, which again, I'm sending this within the general area. So that means all of the students would be able to see that message that I've just sent, but only Susan would receive the notification as soon as that's been sent into the team. So talking about channels now and how we can use these, because they are a really good tool to separating some of the conversations and using the channels over time within the full year. So on the left hand side, we've got a couple of different channels that we've already added to this class. So just to show you how we can do that quickly, we can use the three dots at the top and then just select add channel, and we can just give this a name at the top there. So if I was just to call this maybe just topic 1 for today, select add, and then we'll get a new channel just underneath that there. So selecting on the channel, you'll see this will give us a completely new conversations area. So we can maybe create channels based on topics or any type of conversations you'll have within the team. So then you can separate that and it'll make it easier for the students to be able to find any relevant conversations to that topic so they don't have to scroll, which it might take quite a lot of time if you've got lots of messages throughout the year.
So Lloyd, would you consider creating a different channel for each student in the class? Would that be a good idea, or is there a better way to do that sort of thing?
So for each student, we'll look at the student folders as well, because we do automatically create folders for each student, so they will have their own area they can store their own files. But what we think of these channels of mainly areas for what you're going to be teaching and conversations and topics that you can add into here. So then it makes it easier for the teacher and students to find any recent messages, maybe want to do with assignments or homework tasks, or even just revision areas that you want to add into here for any posts that are relevant to that topic.
Right, I see. So they're more kind of like collaboration spaces where students have discussions and they'll work on documents together, but those aren't the places where students would do work themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So they will have their own folders, which we'll get to later, but this is more related to maybe what they're going to be studying and teachers communicating and collaborating with the students. There's one thing to mention as well on the channels just before we move on. You can see with this gifted and talented one, we do have a padlock on that channel, and that means it is a private channel. So a private channel is where teachers can set those up and only specific students can access those channels, so they're not open to all of the students within the team. So we can set those up the same way, just adding a channel, but this time there's this privacy area where we can select that to be a private channel, and then the teacher can select which students that they want to have access. So that could be a good way to maybe do group work, for example, or even just create a private area within the class team that they just want specific students to have access to.
Right. So for example, you might create maybe a group A, group B, group C, or group oranges, group bananas, group pears, and keep the same students in that same group for a while.
Exactly, and then the students would be able to have access to the channel, and the teachers can come in and see what conversations have been going on and even collaborate with the students when they want to in those channels.
Great. And I guess if you wanted to then mix it up so that the same students weren't always working together, you could just change the membership of those groups, and you could move students from group A into group B, and that would give them an experience of working with different classmates.
Yep, and so every teacher that we add into class teams are all owners of the class. So that means only the teachers have access to do that, so they could quite easily just remove a student quickly from one channel into another. Great, so moving on to some of the files areas now. So first of all, I'll have a look at the centralized areas and show you how we actually add in that centralized tab to each class team to make it easy for the teachers and students to access those resources throughout the year and throughout the time within the school. So within the general area, we have a few more tabs at the top, and you can see here we have the resources for the English subject. So selecting on that tab, we can then see we've got the student resources, and this is a centralized area for all of those documents for the English subject. So that means all of the teachers that teach English will be able to edit documents, collaborate on files, and have that one storage centralized area they can work and upload documents to throughout the time at the school. So these year-based areas, they are student-facing. So that means students can access those documents, but they can't change any files that are within there. So they can So much like talking about when Darren mentioned the files, much like a textbook, these are documents which he was mentioning there, how they can go back in time, and if they was using any of the documents for revision purposes or just to access them, it's quite easy to do that within the class team. If I just go up a level, so back to the student resources and the general area, selecting on the general documents, these would be files which would just be for the teachers of that subject. So the students would not have access to any of the files within that general area. So this would be much like mark sheets, department meetings that we've got within here. So any files that you don't want the students to view, they can store within those centralized folders, and that just makes it easy to access those documents without any of their class teams within the Teams app here.
And these are shared spaces for teachers, Lloyd. So even though you're in the context of a Year 11 English class and it's a single class, when you come into this space, you're actually seeing resources for the whole English subject and all the years within that.
Exactly, yes. So it's that centralized support. It doesn't matter which team they're within. If they maybe teach a couple of different English classes, they can still access those same files. And this makes it easier for the next year as well. So once they've got another class team for the next academic year, that means they can still reach into those files and access the same documents, which makes it easier, so they don't have to move any files around, even though they're going to a next academic year with the class.
Right. So that sounds like it's going to save a lot of teacher time, because teachers are not going to have to spend time moving documents around year on year or copying documents between different classes of the same level. I guess that would drive up quality as well, wouldn't it? Because it means the head of department for English or whichever subject it is, they could basically see all the resources that were going to be used for teaching and learning, rather than those resources being siloed off inside, individual class teams, or perhaps in the teacher's OneDrive or local network drives and things like that.
Definitely, yeah, and it makes it easy for teachers to collaborate on files as well, so that they're not just working on documents in their own OneDrive area that only they can access. This way they can actually work together on files, which again, aids to improving quality of the documents and that the students can access and revise from. That's
right. One of the questions we get is, but what about those teachers that want to take a copy of a document, of a resource, and they want to customize it for their class, because they might have some students in their class who are more gifted, or they need additional support. What if a teacher wants to take that resource and make it available for their class and make it different? Could they still do this with that approach, or is there a better way of doing it?
They could do that, yeah. You can still, take from these maybe master files that are within the subject, and they can move it into their own class. If they do want to maybe customize that, for their own class, they can still use the files area, which we'll get to in a second, and which then only the teachers for this class can access.
Right. But I guess the idea would be they would then put it back into the pot anyway. So if you take a document and you do some work to differentiate that by creating a different version of that document, and it's an advanced level document, it's got some extension activities, it's got some activities at the start to ease students gently into the work if they need more support and need to go a bit more slowly. And I guess if you make a really good version of that, rather than hogging that, you could put it back into the pot, and then other teachers could use that same resource. So you're differentiating your resources, but you're doing it in a centralized way that the head of departments can see, rather than individual teachers just creating lots of copies of their own documents.
Yep, exactly. So I'll move on to more the students' view now, what they can see and where they can actually edit the files, because we've just looked at the teachers and where they can upload and edit documents, but of course the students can't change any of these files that are within here. So if I go to the Files tab now, and we can see within this files area, there's a student work folder that we would create for each class team. And selecting on that within the teachers view, we can see a folder for every student within this class team. So as a teacher, we can actually go into these student areas and see any of the documents that they've been working on, if that's Word documents or PowerPoint files, or any type of files that they're working on throughout the year. Teachers can go into here, and they do have edit access as well to see any of those files. In terms of what the students would see, they can only access their own folder, so they wouldn't be able to go into another student's folder and view or change any of those files.
So I guess if you didn't have this, because this is not something that comes as standard with class teams. This is part of the Cloud Design Box product. We create these extra libraries. I guess if you didn't have these, then students would end up doing work maybe in their OneDrive or on local file shares or the desktop at grandma's and things like that. And that would cause a problem because teachers couldn't see the work as it was starting to be done. If it was a long-term project and the teacher wanted to check that the students were, first of all, make sure they'd started the project, but also make sure they haven't gone off on a tangent, make sure they're following the brief that they were given. With this model, I guess the teacher could just kind of lean over the shoulder of the students, metaphorically, and see the work that they were doing, even if those students were at home doing the work. Whereas if you didn't have this in place, those students would be doing that work somewhere else, and the student and the teacher just couldn't see it.
Exactly, and that just adds more steps for the student teacher as well. So if the student had to create a document, maybe in the OneDrive, they'd then have to send a link to the teachers, if that's through OneDrive or email. There's just more things which could go wrong, especially if maybe another teacher comes into the class as well. Those links would be broken. But this way, the students can just upload or create new documents and work from this folder, and that means the teachers of the class will have access to those documents straight away just by being an owner of the class team. Right, so if I just show you that from the student's view as well, just to show you what that would look like. Within the class dashboard, they do have a link which will go straight to their working folder as well. So if they want to open that within Teams, that will take them straight to their own student folder that's been set up, and they'll be able to access any of their Word documents, if that's coursework or anything that they've stored within their own folder.
And I guess that kind of approach like that's going to work really well for your prep students, because they might struggle finding their way into Teams and finding the right tab. But if they come through our intranet and our mega menu and our class dashboard, then it's nice big icons which work
exactly
for them.
Yeah, and that really helps them to work independently, and it really works well on tablet devices as well. And they can use that in the browser, and within the Teams app they'll be able to navigate straight into their own folder. And as you can see, they can only access their own folder if they was to go to that student work area within the class team, and everything's in the context of that class as well, so it'll help the students organize any of the files because they're already saving it within that class team that they're working in. So now to move on to some of the class notebook areas which comes with each class team, and then the assignments as well, and we'll touch upon that within this session. So going back to the teacher's view, I'm now going to move to the class notebook tab, and then just to show you how you can access this, again using the class dashboard, and some of the reasons why you'd want to use the class notebook and some of the benefits of using this tool. So we can access the notebook via the class team as well once it's been set up, but you can see it's quite narrow at the moment, and we can't actually access any of the students' sections, their own notebooks, easy without actually having to open up the sections there, which is not the best experience. So going back through the dashboard within the teacher's view, if I was to select on the Year 11 class here, we do have a link straight to that class notebook, and as soon as I've selected that, you can see it's opened it in the full browser view, which gives us a lot more room to be able to work within, and we can see the sections straight away as soon as that's been opened. So at the top here, just to go through some of these sections, we've got a collaboration space, which comes with the class notebook. So this is an area you can create pages for the students, and the students can actually collaborate and edit any of these pages on here. So it's much like maybe having a large piece of paper where you can brainstorm ideas and students can work together on tasks which is really useful tool within the class notebook. Then just below that we have the content library. So this is much like the teacher's notes area. So it's any pages or notes that the teacher was to add to the notebook that students can just view, and they can't edit any of these pages. So a good example of how you might want to use this is maybe some lesson objectives, for example, it's one that we've got on the screen here. And you can add different dates, maybe add some videos of lessons as well, links into here. It's another quite useful way to add this, and you can actually use assignments and class notebook together. So I'll show you how you can link those when we get onto the create an assignment task.
So, Lloyd, if you're adding videos and things into the class notebook, those YouTube videos, won't that weigh the notebook down and make it too heavy and maybe make it take a long time to sync?
Yeah, so we would recommend to, if you was adding videos on large documents, to try and keep that to a minimum. Any of those documents would recommend to put into those SharePoint centralized areas, because they're perfect for large storage, and they'll work really well for that. But the class notebook is much more like a lightweight exercise book, online exercise book that the teacher and student share. So you can still add content like that, but it's just bearing in mind, if you was to use this as a complete storage area, you would get issues, and you might get syncing errors as well over time of using it.
But I guess things like YouTube would be okay, because you're not embedding. You haven't stolen or taken the video from YouTube. You've embedded it, which means it's not actually in the notebook.
Yeah, so just like this example here, streams supported within the notebooks, you can just add a link straight for maybe a recorded meeting, which will then just sit in that notebook there that students can access quite easy.
Great.
So the last thing to show is just the student's view and how they can access the Immersive Reader tool as well, which Darren mentioned in the first few slides. So from the teacher's view, just to show you can access every student's notebook section. So if I was to go down to Susan's area here, we've got the class notes section, which the students can edit, so they can use this area to be able to make any of the notes. And again, the teachers can look over the shoulder and see anything that they've done within that lesson. So switching to the student's view now, if I just bring this up a second. Again, the students can access the notebook via the class team. You can get to the main browser view as well, just using this tool here to open that fully within the browser. And when I was mentioning the Immersive Reader there, so that's a tool where you can actually completely change the display of any of the text or images that's been added to one of the pages. So just to give you a quick example, if I was to go to the content library, so maybe one of the lesson objectives that's been added here, and so pages that students can't edit. If I was to use this Immersive Reader option at the top, that will completely change the display of the content on that page. So you can see at the top here as well, the students can actually change the preference of the way this is displayed. So if they want to add a different colour background to make it easier for them to be able to read and view that content. And they do have the adjectives and verbs as well, which they can highlight any of those words on the page there, which makes it again really easy to make those stand out for the students. And the last one is if they do want to translate any of the text in here, they can use the option here to select the language they'd like to translate that to, and they would get original version and the translated version on the page there. They can just switch between.
And those translations are pretty good, aren't they, Lloyd? I know you're a French speaker, and I'd like to dabble as well. But they're pretty clever. They don't just translate word for word. They kind of look at the context of those sentences. So you can be confident that if you're translating that into French or Spanish or Italian or Polish or Mandarin, it's actually doing a really good job.
Yep, you do get the options as well at the bottom where you can actually play the text. So even if you want to use this for any language lessons, you can actually set the speed. So if you want to slow it down or speed it up, and you've got different voice selections there as well, which again can be really useful, especially for languages. So coming out of the class notebook tool, then we'll move on to assignment, show you how we can actually set one of those up and use some of the class notebook pages. So if I switch back to the teacher's view now, and if I go to assignments, this is where, as a teacher, we'll be able to see all of the assignments that have been set within this specific class. So we've got a couple at the moment which are ongoing, and we can see which ones have actually been returned back to the students, and if the students have handed those in as well. So to create a new assignment, I can use the create option. We can either create a blank assignment, we can use quizzes as well. So if you've been using Microsoft Forms and quizzes before, you can actually reuse those and send them out as assignments. And you can create assignments from existing as well. So if you do want to save yourself time, you can set some of those up once you've used them before. So I'm just going to create a blank assignment, show you some of the options that we get within here, and mainly how we can actually use those centralized resources we was looking at earlier to then send out to the students as a formal assignment. So first of all, we can start by just adding a quick title to my assignment. We can add some instructions in here. So we can add some text, can say complete the worksheet below for this example today, and you do get a lot of space within here. So even if you aren't maybe attaching a document or anything that you want the students to do, even if it's just a research task, you do have a lot of space to add some instructions into that box there. But now to be able to go into that bank of resources for the subject, we can do this by using the add resources option. And then we've got lots of different ways we can attach pages or documents from. So we can see we do have the class notebook tool as well. So this is where we can actually reach into that class notebook and select any of the pages that we've created within here to actually send out as a formal assignment. But for this example, I'm going to use the English site, so that centralized area for the teachers. So if I go to Teams, I can then find my subject team. So I've got English for this case, and now within here, I can select any of those areas to actually use this for the assignments. If I go to year 11, for example, just going to my student resources, going to year 11, and then I'll be able to select any of the documents that I've got within here. So we've got Of Mice and Men, and I can maybe select a document that's been stored within here. So if this was a worksheet, attach that to the assignment, and then as soon as that's been attached, we can actually select this for students to edit their own copy. So at the moment it says students can't edit this file, so this would maybe just be a reference document, but we can actually select the three dots and then select students to edit their own copy. So when this is sent out, they'll have their own file that they can fill out and then send back to the teacher so we can formally mark that.
So again, this is where we're saving the teacher time load with those centralized resources, because teachers don't have to worry about uploading documents into individual classes so that they can assign them just in time. They can just reach into the centralized bank and know that there's going to be a good quality resource they can use.
Exactly, yeah, and they'll be able to do this year on year, so they've got the same files that they can use, and just by setting up this quick assignment, the students will then have their own document they can then fill out and send back. So it's a really easy way to to send out a file and send out some formal homework that the students can fill in.
Brilliant. Just a reminder, by the way, for the folks who are listening, if you have any questions about how you might use class teams and things like Class Notebook, or if you're using class teams in your classroom at the moment and you've encountered any barriers, if you want to ask us some questions, we can take those at the end. So you've got a button you can click on, as Sandra has just done. Thank you, Sandra. You've got a Q&A button you can click on where you can ask us questions, and we'll answer those questions in just a couple of minutes now. Thanks, Lloyd.
Great. So last few things just to go over. So we've got the rubric that we can add as well. So this is much bit of an advanced tool within assignments, and it's really useful for teachers. But just to give you a quick overview of how you can use this, I'll just add one that I've created before, and this will then, you can use this just like a grading criteria, and it can actually speed up the marking when we are returning the work to the students. So I can attach that to the assignment, but you can create those from this option here when you are creating the assignment, and even share those out with other teachers, which again can save teacher time and use resources over and over for the assignments. We can then select the class that we want to assign that to. I'm just going to leave that for all the students, and then select a date due and a time due for the assignment to be sent in by. One useful tool to mention on this, we can actually set assignments to be scheduled in the future as well. So if you do want to maybe save a bit of time and create a few assignments at once, you can then set a date for that to be set to the students. But for this case, I'm just going to leave that as it is, so I can open that today and show you the student view and how they can quickly edit assignment and send it back to the teacher. So I can assign that out, and then as soon as that's been assigned, we can see that in the new assign section at the bottom. And if I quickly just switch to the student account, we should be able to see that assignment come through. If I just give that a couple of seconds, we will see a notification at the top as soon as the assignments come through to the students. So it can usually take a couple of seconds or so as I've sent that to the full class, but as soon as the assignment has come through to the student, we'll receive the activity at the top, and we'll be able to, the student can keep up to date with everything that's coming in, and they'll receive a notification in the assignments area as well as soon as that's been sent in. So while that's just waiting to be sent in, we can see that's actually just come through now. So I'll just quickly show this, what the students would see from this side. They'll receive a message in the general area as well, or whichever channel we've set that to be sent through. And they've got the work they can complete. So they've got a direct link straight to the assignment, and they can even refer back to that rubric that we signed, and they can see the criteria for what they need to meet there for the assignment.
Brilliant. Lloyd, as ever, time is against us, and I know we've got a couple of questions which will require a few more things to show. So would it be okay if we move to the Q&A part?
Yep, no problem. Yeah, we can get to the Q&A.
I know there's a question that's come in from Sandra. Thanks, Sandra. She wants to know, is there anything on this which is useful for admin staff, or perhaps school business staff? Because obviously everything we've shown here is very much geared towards teachers and students, and that's a very, very big part of what we do. But we also create kind of an intranet experience, if you like, where everybody in the school can pick up resources and pick up policies and news and things like that. And also we can create specific areas or teams, if you like, for each of the business areas of the school. So you might have a team for finance, team for HR, various admin teams for SLT. Would you mind, Lloyd, could you switch us over to the mega menu so that we can take a quick look at those for Sandra?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let me just bring that up a second.
Thank you, Lloyd. There's so much to show in Office 365 and in our product. We tend to focus on one thing at a time, so we focus on Teams, we focus on Class Notebook, but there's a whole world of communication and intranets that's also available. Do you want to just talk us through very quickly what the communication areas are and the collaboration areas are for a slide?
Yep, so on the left here we can see links to communication sites. So these are just sites within SharePoint and the school intranet, which would be targeted at large groups of people. So some good examples of that would be a staff site. So this would be an area where you can store policies, any documents. We've got staff briefing areas here as well, lunch rota. So any files for all members of staff, we can have a site here which staff would be able to come in here, read documents, and maybe certain members would be able to upload files and edit documents as well in specific places within that site. So that's how the main communication areas can be used, but you could have these for lots of different other sites as well. Got IT support service, again, another site which large groups of people can access. We then have
the IT department had, lots of interesting resources, guides, how to do things. The IT department could put them in that place, post a news item about it, and then members of staff on the staff homepage would see that news item and they'd see there was something interesting to look at.
Yep, exactly. You do have the news articles as well, as you mentioned, within the SharePoint sites. That's a really good way to keep these sites, not as a way just to upload documents to, but you can actually use them as communication areas to send out information, if that's just linked to websites or even news articles that you want to create yourselves as well, to customize, for the school.
And I noticed there's a form on that page of some sort. Does that mean you can create forms and then surface those forms for people to fill in? So maybe holiday request forms, or minibus booking forms, or my computer is broken, please fix it forms, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So any forms that you create just within Microsoft Forms, you can just surface the link within here, which again you can see makes it really easy to add those to the pages and for staff to be able to submit responses to those.
Brilliant. And can you show us one of the collaboration teams, Lloyd, just to show the difference between a wide audience communication site where most people are readers and a collaboration area where actually everybody's a member, everybody has more or less the same permissions to edit content, to see everything, like our data team, for example?
Yep, so the data team, so the main difference with the communication areas and these collaboration areas, data team would actually link to a Microsoft team as well. So at the moment we're looking at the intranet point of view, where we can still see documents. We can still come in here, access this via the browser and access all of the files and edit documents within here. Once you're a member of this data team, you can actually edit any files that are stored within here. But this would actually also link to a Microsoft team. So we've got the general, we've got different channels for exams, reporting and grades as well. So any of the documents that are stored within here, we can actually go into the team's point of view and have conversations and collaborate on those files as well. So if I was just to show you what that would look like from the team's point of view, if I just go into Microsoft Teams, since I'm a member of the data team, that means when I go to all of the teams within here, I can actually find that data team, and I would be able to see all of those channels where we can have conversations and collaborate on documents. So we can either access those via SharePoint, via the intranet and the mega menu, or if we're actually working on a document, you can come into here as well, maybe have a conversation, send out a file to a document. So I could go into reporting and grades, for example, and I can still see the documents that were stored in there, but have conversations and collaborate on those files within Teams.
Thanks, Lloyd. Sandra as well, just to make you aware, obviously there's a lot of stuff we can go through in terms of the admin teams that we just don't have time to do today. But I have just looked up your details, and you do have lots of training available with us, because I know that you're one of our current customers. So we'll get in touch afterwards and hopefully organise that so you can have a proper session on the admin teams specifically. Awesome.
Thanks, Tony. If you have any more questions, guys, if you'd just like to post them into Q&A for us now.
So we did have a question, Lloyd. Can I see which students have not taken part in online lessons?
Yep, so we can do that using an insights tool that you can add to any of your class teams. So we have actually added this to the English one I was looking at earlier on. So we've got insights at the top there. So we can add this just using the add option where you've got your tabs, and you'll be able to see the insights, so you can just search for it, and that should then take a few seconds or so for it to be added to the class. So once that's added, this is a tool where you can monitor students' activity. So, as you mentioned, if you wanted to view which students had taken part of any online lessons that have been set through the English class, you can quite easily do that. So within the tool here in the insights, you've got this main landing page, which will show you how many students have been inactive. So we've got quite a few students in this class, in this demo site, but we should be able to see Susan, so the account that I've been using today, and we've got some marks here where they've actually been active. So in this session today, so if you was doing some online lessons within a class team, you can actually set what type of activity. So you could set that to meetings, or even assignments if you want to monitor that as well. You can narrow that down and see which students have been active and if they've been on any of the online lessons that have been scheduled within this class.
Great, and there is a senior leader view to that as well, isn't there? So you can get an overview of the entire school.
Yep, so the senior leader view, you can go to the navigation bar on the far left hand side, and you can see insights there as well, or install if it doesn't appear straight away. And again, this is where it'll show you all of the activity from the students from across all of your classes. And then right at the top right hand side, we've got a leader's experience, which will give us a bit more of a overview dashboard of how the students are doing across the full school, which again you can monitor the activity with students from this point.
Great. And can you just click on digital engagement tab at the top? So this is where you could actually track a student across all of their classes and actually see if they are taking part in that lesson. Sorry, I think that screen's not working today. But this will give you an overview of how the students are using it across the entire school. So you can spot any trends, any issues with any students. We also, as Cloud Design Box, we also provide a teacher analytic tool. And this will help you keep track of user adoption in the school. So how well teachers are adopting it, and also give your senior leaders a bit of an overview of how well teachers are actually setting assignments across their classes in your particular subject area.
So Tony, for that to happen, does that mean that, you know, if you're a head of department or you're a head of year or a senior leader for the curriculum, does that mean you have to be in every class team to see what those assignments are?
No, so that's the problem, is a lot of people that use Teams out of the box, they ask to be added into every single class team in their department. And there's a reason they're asking for that. They want to check on the quality of resources that their teachers are using in those lessons, but they also want to make sure that work is being set in their particular department. So actually, by having those analytics and by having those central resource areas, you don't need to be added into every single class team, because that's just a really bad idea. You'll get thousands of notifications, you'll have to trawl through lots of classes. It's not great for saving teachers time. So hopefully by having that solution, having those centralized resource areas where you can reuse your resources, you can check on the quality of those resources, and actually having those analytics to make sure that work is being set, then as a department leader, you don't need access to every single individual class team.
That's good, because it lets you work in kind of a more strategic way, kind of a top-down way, where if you're a leader, if you're the principal, you can see what's happening. If you're the data team, you can get that information out without necessarily drilling down all the way into individual classes. Yeah,
great. Can you bring up the contact details, Darren, just so people can see all the links that we've got for other resources that they might find useful? I did have a quick question for John. John at RivaNET, can you describe how you guys work with Cloud Design Box and how it complements the services that you offer?
Absolutely. Yes, thanks for that. So it was only a few months ago, really, wasn't it, that we had a number of schools who were using Office 365 and starting to use Teams, and then all of a sudden that accelerated massively. I think the common saying is we've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in just 2 months, and schools are really looking for help, and they were looking for experts in 2 ways. One is to help them get 365 set up in the most optimal way, including the Teams. So a lot of that is the infrastructure work. It's about setting up the right systems, making sure with the right licensing, making sure you've got things like good Wi-Fi even, which really helps. But equally, when you get to using the tools, you want some real experts to be able to, train you, handhold you, provide loads of tools and really useful tips. And for us, that was clearly where Cloud Design Box have massive expertise. And I think this session has really demonstrated that if you need to know anything at all about Teams in teaching and learning, then Cloud Design Box are definitely the people to go to. So we're very, very pleased to work with them. And as I said before, when we work with schools, we get them up and running with the basics and then recommend the Cloud Design Box, handhold them from there on.
Thank you, John.
Yep, thanks, John, and thanks everyone for attending. We've got the RivaNET contact details up on the screen now, so if you did want to get in contact with them about any of the services that they offer, feel free to get in touch via email or telephone. And can we just show our contact details screen again? We've got some QR codes on there, so if you have got a mobile phone, if you point your mobile phone at that QR code with the camera on. That will provide you with the link so you don't have to remember them. There's a link to the Twitter community, our Facebook group where you can talk to other educators using Teams, our YouTube channel, lots of useful videos on there, and our monthly newsletter as well. Thanks for attending, everyone. Thanks for taking part, John, and thanks for a great demo, Lloyd and Darren.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, guys.
Bye.